The Mandalorian Season 3 finale, titled The Return, was frustrating for me. It was a fun ride and had some great Mandalorian action. I liked most of the episode, but I was baffled by some of the story decisions, so let's just get into the episode and talk through it. We open up right where we left off, with the Mandalorians on the run. Din is still captured and being taken to a debriefing room, but he fights his way free with the help of Grogu, who then sprays him with Bacta to make sure his dad is alright, which is adorable and funny. But this was also the first moment that stood out to me. I was excited that Din was the one that was captured this time around instead of Grogu, that the son would have to save the father this season and not the other way around. I started to wonder how that would affect each of them individually, how it would affect their relationship. Gideon might remove Din's helmet, forcing him to choose whether or not to be redeemed again, but it was all solved within the first 3 minutes with ease. On one hand, that is a very adventure serial story thing to do. Star Wars has always been based on things like Flash Gordon, where each episode would end with some insane cliffhanger, and you'd wonder how Flash was going to get out of this problem, and then right away in the next episode it's easily fixed. So I acknowledge the origins of this kind of storytelling, but I think it could have been executed better. And my larger issue is that this series continues to set up interesting possibilities for Din's emotional and spiritual journey that wind up going nowhere. Like the Darksaber being too heavy for him to wield. That felt like it had great potential for some character development, to learn about himself and connect with the blade just like Sabine did in one of the absolute best episodes of Star Wars Rebels, but he just passes it to Bo-Katan instead. Or there's the removal of his helmet to let Grogu see his face. That put him at odds with the Armorer and the rest of his clan. We could have dug into his relationship with a group this series has labeled a cult in its own words, but he just goes to redeem himself, and then sees acceptance of Bo-Katan and her Mandalorians, and continues to leave his helmet on. Din being rescued quickly is the least egregious of these examples, but when it happens in the season finale, where Din usually experiences some new level of personal growth, it makes me wonder what the plan is with his character, if there is one at all, because right now, he seems like he's spinning his wheels. Fortunately, there is some cool Mandalorian action that I still very much enjoy. We've got Axe flying up to gather reinforcements and take on the TIE squadrons, and Din fighting through the laser gates one at a time, gathering weapons and equipment every step of the way. I liked all of that, and it culminates in Gideon's cloning facility, which was a creepy sequence. And I enjoyed Bo-Katan traveling with the Mandalorian survivors to a cave full of gardens. Like Din told Grogu in Chapter 18, Mandalore was once green and full of life, and now we're seeing hope that, as the title of this chapter suggests, it can return to its former natural state. If Mandalorians can stop fighting and stop messing up their own planet, there can be beauty and balance. I would not have minded lingering there, but the Armorer and the rest of the reinforcements arrive in dropships, and yeah, I am still not at all sick of seeing Mandalorians jump out of those things. The build-up to the counterattack rocked. Bo with the Darksaber and the Armorer with her tools leading an army against several Imperial super commandos was a great moment, and I loved seeing them all kick ass, because it's a very Imperial idea to come in and try to steal what they consider to be the best parts of a culture without ever taking the time to understand it. The super commandos have jetpacks and flamethrowers and whipcords and blasters, all the same gadgets and weapons, but none of that is wrapped up in their history and identity the way it is with Mandalorians. The Empire thinks it's enough to simply take and possess what they view as power, but it will never truly be theirs without knowledge and experience. And all those Mandalorian gadgets are power. Since the beginning of this series, I have talked about the Star Wars theme of what you do with the power you have. For the Jedi and the Sith, that power is the Force. For Mandalorians, it's their weapons and Beskar armor. For thousands of years, Mandalorians used their power to conquer and take and divide, but now they're using it to unite and defend their home, and they're winning. Speaking of Imperials trying to take things they don't understand, Gideon confirms to Din that he was in fact trying to make Force-sensitive clones of himself. He claims that it worked, but I doubt it. We might not ever know for sure, but the idea behind it is consistent with Gideon's character. Just like the recreation of Mandalorian armor and weapons, he thinks he can make the Force his own, which of course you can't. I firmly believe anyone and everyone can be Force-sensitive if they have the right mindset, if they seek understanding. Having a high metachlorian count might give you an advantage, but it's not the end-all be-all for Force sensitivity. So the irony is that, in theory, Gideon could have what he wants if he were willing to change his outlook and put in the work, but that's not him, and that's not the Empire. He wants the quick and easy route. He wants it handed to him because he thinks he deserves it. The fight against Gideon and the Praetorian Guards was cool. I loved watching Grogu protect himself using the exact lessons Luke taught him, and then I loved that he and Din are victorious together. Din saves Grogu at first, but then Grogu protects Din throughout the rest of the battle. They're a team. And then we stick with those themes of teamwork and unity as they join Bo-Katan to take down Gideon. But first, I've got to talk about the destruction of the Darksaber, which now we're back to things that frustrated me. On the one hand, I like the defiance of its importance. Gideon claims Mandalorians are weak without their trinkets. Like I said, I have been comparing their trinkets to their power as a culture this entire series. I still think that's true, but it's nothing compared to the power of community. Another major theme of Star Wars is selfishness versus selflessness. In last week's episode, Bo-Katan admitted to her selfishness, which I think is referring to her time with Death Watch. The idea that her sect of Mandalorians were right and the others were wrong. That was selfish, but she has put that behind her. She is putting the good of all Mandalorians first, and it has made them unstoppable. So there is an element of destroying the Darksaber that I like, but I think it would have been more powerful for Bo-Katan to make that decision for herself. I'm glad it didn't faze her. I'm glad she proved Gideon wrong and kicked his ass without it, but this is another thing this season that just happened to her. She accidentally joined a cult, then she was ordered to take her helmet off, then she was given the Darksaber, and then it was taken from her. I think it absolutely shows character growth that she no longer thinks she needs the Darksaber to lead. That's great, but I wish she decided to set it aside herself rather than have her enemy make that decision for her. Gideon ultimately dies because he has no one to protect him. He has no true allies. He is part of an Imperial remnant, but he was actively working to undermine them and take control. And I absolutely think every other warlord on that council had their own agenda as well. I think they all have selfish motivations to take power for themselves. Compare that to a beautiful image of Din, Bo-Katan, and Grogu, three completely different Mandalorians surrounded by fire but surviving because they are there for one another. That's great. And we see some growth for Grogu, who does something amazing with the Force and then just needs to have a little sit down instead of a full-on nap. With the battle complete and Mandalore reclaimed, we see Ragnar Vizsla take the Creed once again, this time in the Living Waters. And this scene, I don't know what to make of it. Once more, it seemed like a chance for development for Din, but the biggest emotional breakthrough was Din saying he would adopt Grogu, and I mean, yeah, duh. I thought we were already on the same page with that. The Armorer said Din was like Grogu's father back in Season 1, so that moment didn't really land for me. And I also just don't know what to think of the Children of the Watch anymore. I feel like the Armorer's story has been bouncing back and forth. To me, it seemed like there was a lot of emphasis placed on strict adherence to rules that didn't matter. Throughout the season, I wanted Din to decide that being a Mandalorian didn't mean wearing your helmet all the time, it meant living with honor. And he did arrive at that point, kind of. He accepted Bo-Katan as his leader. I do think that's the point of the Children of the Watch, because I don't mind that they have their own set of rules they want to follow. If you want to keep your helmet on all the time, go for it. But the second you start to tell other Mandalorians that your rules have to be their rules too, then we have a problem. So I think the Armorer and the rest of the Children of the Watch have decided to live and let live, and I am happy about that. But I have also wanted Din to make that a personal decision as well. I feel like there is this tension between the removal of his helmet in Season 2 and then his immediate desire to redeem himself as if it were some kind of mistake. I don't think he regrets showing his face to Grogu. I think he knows there are moments where the helmet should come off. So even though I'm happy the Children of the Watch have all grown as a group, I was hoping for more change on a personal level for Din. And I think that's a good representation of my feelings for this episode and this season. I like the larger story of Mandalorians uniting and growing as a culture to reclaim their home. Seeing them reignite the Great Forge side by side was cool. But Din's story, the story of the Mandalorian, felt like it was left behind. But looking to the future, I'm happy about the setup for Season 4, and it does show some growth for Din. He offers his services to the New Republic. Back in the very first episode, he calls the government a joke. He knew they couldn't protect the Outer Rim. In Season 1, he used his power and abilities selfishly to make money for himself and for his covert's foundlings, to be fair, but now he's going to use his power for the benefit of the entire Outer Rim. I think that's great, but I also think it feels like setup for Season 4 rather than a natural conclusion to Season 3. As we reach the end, I like having IG-11 rebuilt and acting as the Marshal for Navarro, another bounty hunter with a renewed purpose, and I like Din and Grogu having a place to kick back and relax in between adventures. I liked the peaceful ending. Again, there was a lot I liked about this episode, but I think it was my least favorite finale of the three. I enjoyed the action, I enjoyed the comedy, I enjoyed the story of the Mandalorian people, but the smaller story of Din and Grogu, what I would consider to be the heart of the series, seemed to take a back seat. Did I hate the episode? No. Am I turning on the series? Not at all. I still think that even when I consider an episode or an entire season to be a bit of a mess, it's an absolute blast to watch. Even typing and talking through my criticisms and feelings here, I've found more to appreciate than I did on my first watch. I look forward to Season 4 with or without the focus being back on the Mandalorian and the child, but I do hope it's with. I think I've said enough for today, and I've got plans to discuss the season as a whole in the next few days, so I'm gonna wrap up. Let me know what you thought of the Season 3 finale in the comments. If you haven't already, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, follow us on TikTok, Twitter, and Instagram, and consider checking out our Patreon page for video reactions and audio commentaries for every episode. As always, thanks for watching, and may the Force be with you.